In this episode of Shutter Nonsense, we dive into the world of photo printing. Getting started, choosing between printing at home versus using an outside lab, choosing the right paper, and things to consider when editing for print. Those are just some of the topics we'll explore. I also share my favorite papers and tips for printing, and we both reflect on how holding and viewing a physical print can reshape the way you shoot and edit. After the episode, as always, join the conversation over on Patreon as a free or paid member. Whether you have questions about getting started or want to share your own experiences around printing your work, we'd love to hear from you. Let's get started. Hey everybody, it's episode 9 of Shutter Nonsense, and you've just missed me completely fumbling my way trying to figure out what to say. So anyways, welcome to the show. And Jeffrey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I've been tired this week. I don't know what my deal is. Probably the Texas heat kicking in. It's just been.
I was going to say you probably have that heat down there too.
Yeah. I was running around outside a fair bit yesterday, and definitely was feeling it by the mid-afternoon. So yeah, I'm already ready for fall. But I'll take my trip to Colorado in 10 days.
Yeah, it's coming up quick.
About a week and a half. Yeah. I think I might just head straight to the highest elevation I can get to, and elevation sickness be damned.
That's 100% what I would do with this heat. I'd love to be able to find some higher mountains.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And where are you going? You've got a trip coming up in a few days, don't you?
Yeah, I'm planning on going to New River Gorge area, New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia, for essentially just a long weekend, but slightly higher elevation, not Colorado Rockies.
I was going to say, I'm not terribly familiar with that park, so.
Yeah, it's one of the newer parks in the system. It used to be still known for whitewater rafting and stuff, but it's sort of a national park that just sort of follows the river through the whole way. So think a handful of waterfalls, lots of overlooks with a river down below, and some big cliff drops.
Cool.
So for the east, it should be cool. It's been decades since I've been there, so I just sort of wanted to go scout it out. More for maybe if something interesting happens in the spring or fall, I'll know where I want to go to jet down there to get some photos.
Cool. Yeah, I'm a little apprehensive about the Colorado trip. So I was planning on heading back to San Juan area again. Of course, 5 days ago or so, fire broke out near Ouray. Is that how you pronounce it? Ouray? I don't think I've ever actually said it out loud.
I'm not gonna argue with you on that pronunciation. It sounds good to
I
me.
read it all the time,
there's some...
but I don't know if I've ever said it. Anyways, that's kind of like right in the target area I had, so I've been watching that, and I don't think the fire itself is a problem right now. I'm just worried it's going to really layer in the smoke. Hopefully they'll get some rain or something to kind of clear things out between now and then. Still got leave on the 9th, so still got, like I said, about a week and a half before I get up there. That's what I'm really anticipating right now in terms of what I've been working on. You and I were kind of joking yesterday in one of our Discord groups, like I'm working on everything that I really shouldn't be working on. I'm editing. Right. I started editing episode 8 last night or yesterday afternoon when, it's not going to be out for another month and a half at least.
Right.
So I'm using that as my procrastination for the stuff I should be doing, like writing my featured frames content for this Sunday. So as usual, I'll be putting that off to the last minute. Trying to think if there's anything else I've really worked on this week. I think it's primarily just been, again, podcast, even though it doesn't necessarily need to be podcast. So, whatever. I'll be out of town for a week and a half, so at least I'll feel like I've got a good runway from a podcast editing standpoint. I guess same for you, too, with you heading out. How long are you going to be at the, I already forgot the name of the park. How long are you going to be there?
New River Gorge. You people west of the Mississippi forget us East folk even exist.
That's exactly it.
It'll probably be a long weekend, so probably like 4 days. My plan is to take off on a Thursday night, which is maybe the 9th.
I think the 9th of
maybe
Friday.
The 10th. Oh, then the 8th. But yeah, plan would be to take off on the Thursday late afternoon, and then be down there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning, and then come back on Monday.
Yeah.
So
that should be good for scouting.
Yeah, that's what I figure. Should be fun to poke around, see if my oldest kid wants to go or not. Yeah. They're on the fence, but we'll see if they want to go and cruise down there and just see what I see. It's been a long time since I've been down there, so just want to get some pens and scout it out for fall potential or spring potential.
Yeah, it's kind of, the area I'm planning on heading is beautiful pretty much any time of year, and we should have wildflowers right now, but Also, yeah, definitely scouting it with thoughts of a fall trip. Less so spring. Definitely would love to be back in the Cimarron area in fall. Just the amount of aspens around there and the geography and everything has got to be absolutely stunning. So fingers crossed on that.
Awesome.
Who knows? Maybe a future workship. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
So
that'd be awesome out there.
Cool.
Good time of year. Like you said, if wildflowers pans out this time of year, that's sort of a nice little time. Because I don't know about you, but I tend to not get out a whole lot in the summer. You know, I know you get the Texas heat, and even here in the Midwest, it's like, you know, the days are crazy long, and everything is at least here, it's the dark greens. So we've gone past the cool spring greens with that nice pop of almost neon green to it's just all big dark green convoluted scenes. So in my opinion, I struggle with photographing in it, so it's a bit tough to get out in the summer. And
yeah, I mean, having a mountain terrain obviously helps add some interest that may not be there otherwise this time of year. So last year I was closer to the end of July, so I'm a week or two ahead this year. So I'm hoping that wildflowers will be a little bit, because I feel like, if memory serves me correctly, I was a little late on the wildflowers last year. Especially, I think the corn lilies I was late on, and some of the other stuff. Like, I ran into some really great wildflowers, but also there were a lot of areas I was in where it looked like it was, you know, they'd kind of moved on already. Still beautiful.
Right.
But
yeah, of course.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think I'm excited about the photography prospects, but I'm also really looking forward to camping, and probably that first morning while I try to give myself a day or so to acclimate to the elevation. Hopefully sleep in nice and late that first morning and cooler temps and get rejuvenated a bit. Because, I don't know what it is. This last couple of days especially, I've just been dragging. So
yeah, should be nice. Should be great.
Yeah.
Should be fun. Look forward to see the pictures.
Any other updates on your end?
Nah, just put out another YouTube video this week. So, you know, there's always that little process of things. It's a recurring theme. But for the most part, it's been trip planning and getting a YouTube video out. And then I got to catch up on my podcast tasks that are on my plate and due soon.
I know. I'm waiting on a couple.
I know. It's coming. It's like, today's like Shutter Nonsense Day where I get caught back up a little bit so Michael doesn't get mad at me for
Yes, I'm such a taskmaster. I'm a dick. Might edit that out.
You can keep the taskmaster part.
I'll edit out the other part. Try to keep this somewhat family friendly.
No, it's funny. It's just we're very corporate. You and I both. I think we fall back to our corporate roots, where it's like, we got to document this. We got to have to do this. We got to have templates. You know, because we just fall back to that's how you stay efficient.
Well, and hey, man, like,
cover for each other.
Like we've both
helps us.
Yeah, like we both joked. Like there's a lot of tasks that you don't necessarily think about going into something like running a podcast. So I'm very much like, I love a good spreadsheet and a good good processes and everything like that. So, and I got to admit, helpful. Like I rag on Google Workspace a lot, even though I've used it for technically 4 different entities at this point. But it's got some nice tools in terms of helping us keep organized. So, you know,
for sure,
I can't throw too much shade at it. So what was the video released? I know I saw it pop up, but I can't recall what it was now. Just like
Adobe Lightroom remove tool.
Oh, that's right.
Just focused on the remove tool, the generative AI, and they happened to release the distractions tool.
Yeah.
You know, where you can just choose the people. But it's one of those things where I go out to a workshop, and sometimes you just end up at a spot where there's people in the frame, and I'm always like, oh, Adobe Lightroom's made this so easy to fix these days. They go ahead and take your picture, and yes, I know you're going to remove it, but it's not that hard. But I've never had a video to direct them to, so it's just me out there going, it's not that hard, but not a great tool.
Right.
I've actually linked into one of your videos in the past, but, you know, because you did a pretty good video on that tool. But I felt like I wanted one of my own videos, so it was just how to remove people and distractions from a scene using Lightroom. And I was one of those people that used to bash Lightroom for their heal and clone tool, and now I almost never have to leave it to remove or clean
the
things
new
up.
stuff is pretty impressive. And I guess I'll put on my shame hat at this point, but I haven't even downloaded the latest Lightroom update, which for anybody that knows me is like blasphemous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I've come into the office multiple times this week, like, you know what? I just want to sit down and do some editing. I haven't touched the Smoky Mountain files in weeks now. And I come in here and I'm like, I'll edit a podcast, or I'll go do this or that. And next thing I know, it's like 3 hours have gone by and I need to wrap up. So, but yeah, I need to get that downloaded. I want to try it I'm curious, probably the video you're referring to that you linked on mine with the AI, what was it, AI remove, I guess, in Lightroom?
Yeah, AI remove. It was one where it was waterfall with the bridge in front, and people were on the bridge, and you were doing some pretty.
Yeah, it's another one like I always know when I see it, but pronouncing it Multnomah.
Yeah.
Oregonians are going to be throwing their phones as I probably butchered that, but the iconic Oregon waterfall with the concrete arch bridge going over it. Yeah, so I'm curious to go back to that image in particular and try the new people remove and see how it does. Yeah. It theoretically should do fine, but yeah, I haven't had a chance to play with it at all yet. So see.
Yeah. It was cool.
Need to download the update first. So yeah, okay. Well, let's just get into it. Today we wanted to talk about printing and all of the various elements that go along with that from a creative standpoint, artistic kind of statement standpoint, and then the trials and tribulations of it as well, from just the act of doing it, using third-party vendors versus doing it yourself and making that investment on a printer. So I don't know, Jeffrey, I think we kind of chatted before we started recording that I was going to kind of let you take point on this one. I know you've got printing experience too, but I'll toss it your way and see what you want to hit me with off the bat here.
Yeah, we'll switch it this way because Michael's the printing guru between the printing he does at home and things like that. Well, I've had lots of printing trials and tribulations and agree with the end premise. I think it'll work well to sort of dig into Michael's knowledge on this topic because he's got a lot of knowledge. He's always been helpful on it. So, let's kick it off with first just sort of the why print thing, because we're in the digital world where we've got our social media and everything like that, and there's some people I think that printing doesn't even cross their mind. So maybe for people listening to us that are like, oh, it seems like a lot of work. Why print?
I think it's one of those things that it's almost until you see one of your prints and hold one of your prints. Sometimes that's a difficult question to answer. Like in a perfect world, to me, a print, especially my artist series print that I produce on the big printer behind me here, to me, that is the truest, most final representation of my creative vision. But I also know that 99.9999% of people that see my work online will never see it in that form, which is frustrating is not the word. It's disappointing. Like, I really wish I could get more prints into more people's hands. Maybe I should be doing art shows. I don't know, that the idea of those don't really appeal to me, but it's just one of those things, like, until you see it, it takes on a whole new, what's the word I'm trying to think of, Jeffrey? It takes on a whole new, almost meaning, a whole new feeling in terms of an appreciation for your art. There's just something about that tangible aspect of being able to hold it up close, even shifting the angle of it and seeing how the light hits it and reacts with it differently. I know when I first started printing, one of the things that fascinated me, it's actually one of the prints in my box set this year, Look for the Light Volume 3, which is available for pre-order. Yes. Although by the time you watch this, it will not be available for pre-order, but you can order it. Anyways, one of the prints in there, The Condemned, it's a darker, moodier image with some pretty heavy blues and almost purples and some reddish tones in it. And I remember printing it off, and here in my studio, I had one of my lights set to daylight, and then the other light, actually the way they are right now, the other light was set very warm at, I think, 3,200 or 3,500 Kelvin. And I was just fascinated by just rotating the print or changing the angle of the print in my hand so that one angle the daylight light was hitting it and the other angle the warm light was hitting it, how much it just totally changed the dynamic of the print and the way it looked and the way some of the colors popped out under one color temp versus the other. It's just, it's hard to describe until you just see it. I will say too is one of the things that really spurred me to get into the printing as well is, I've talked about this somewhere, maybe it was in one of my interviews with Matt or Grant Swinburne, but back in 2020 when I went to the Out of Chicago conference in Yosemite, Charlotte Hamilton Gibb had her first box set there, and that was really like seeing her prints, which I'd already loved her work, seeing it digitally. One of my favorite photographers, and then the work she's put out from Yosemite over the years and elsewhere. But seeing the prints, and she uses for that box set of paper pretty similar to what I use for my artist series prints, very heavy, fine art, textured paper, and seeing her work represented in that form was such a different experience. And also it forces you to slow down and I think appreciate the work a little bit more. Kind of goes back to the conversation we had with Sarah about, just flipping through a social feed or a gallery or whatever, but, just in the act of holding it and like to look at the next photo, I've got to put this one down and consciously make but I want to put this one down yet. I want to continue to admire it and enjoy it. And it just encourages you to look at other people's work with a different viewpoint, but especially so your own work. And, one thing I need to be better about is I keep telling myself like, before I release any new work, I'm going to at least do proofing prints for every single one, which is probably the right way to do it and the way I should be doing it. But, using my recent example of, releasing 76 images from my archives from my local park, that's a lot of printing, 76 images. And, it goes back to that push and pull of, I know that the majority of people are never going to see it that way. So from an efficiency standpoint, from a quote unquote business operations standpoint, does it make sense to put all that upfront effort on the printing side when that's not going to be the way people see it? So that was, I totally went on I seem to be bringing up my ADHD meanderings, but that was definitely one there. I think I covered like half the topics we had noted down to discuss. But.
No, I think it's good. I mean, to your point, it's because you mentioned holding it in your hand and reviewing it and seeing it. I feel like when you print, that's actually the finished product.
Yep.
That's when you hit the finish line. And our digital shares, they're close to finished, and you may not edit it again, but you've sort of stopped, in my opinion, a little short. Now I've 100% stopped short on a lot of my images. Majority of my images are not printed or put out there, but I would say I'm just a little short of the finish line. And for those images I really, really like, those portfolio images, my top 10 favorite, my top 20 favorite, I feel like you sort of owe it to yourself to print those just for all of the reasons that you sort of covered. And if you don't, you've stopped short of that finish line. So I think printing is something people should certainly consider and do just to experience from that standpoint.
And that's the nice thing of doing my folios and now the box set is, at the very least, I know I've got 10, 20, and I did bonus prints for one of them. So 24. So now I'm up to 36 of my favorite images that I know I've printed multiple times and are out there. I've got copies of them. So to your point, like printing your favorite work, your favorite images, and to that end too, like you don't need to, for your own work or purchasing someone else's, you don't need to go out and buy some 3 foot by 4 foot monstrosity. And a lot of people, like one of the biggest things I hear from people that, I wish I had room on my walls for one of your prints. And that's partly why I wanted to do the limited edition print collections as well. Is like they're 8x10s. You can put up one at a time. You can rotate through them, or you can just keep them in the folio or the box and hand hold them and enjoy them that way. And that goes for your work as well. It's not a matter of like, I would love to have every one of my prints up, but at this point, like talking hundreds, so I know that's not a feasible thing. And blame modern architecture of the last 10, 20 years with open floor plans and less hallways and everything. Like there's just not a lot of space for people to display artwork, I don't think. But that doesn't mean you can't get that same satisfaction and enjoyment out of seeing your own work in an 8x10 or 16x20 or somewhere in between, what have you. There's still that tangible essence to it that just is never going to be replicated by viewing it digitally. And that's not to discount the digital viewing experience, because obviously work can look absolutely beautiful there. But yeah, it's just not the same. It'd be like having a favorite painting that you've seen in person and then viewing it online. Like that experience is never going to be the same. Maybe you've seen the Mona Lisa and the Louvre, and you were just wowed by it, even though the big painting behind it to me is much more stunning. But I could go.
I've never seen it, but I've heard it's always much smaller than what people.
Oh yeah, the Mona Lisa is like a postage stamp. That was kind of my reaction. Like, really? But going home from seeing it in person and looking at it on like, I want to look at the Mona Lisa or whatever, and you pull it up on your computer browser, like it's just not the same. Even though you're not holding the print or the painting, it's not the same as seeing it in person. And especially with a painting, I guess, somebody has touched it and crafted it, and put the what is it, the paint, the ink, the pigments, the oils, whatever.
Oils and stuff.
I am all over the place. There's that tangible aspect of it too, which is something like I've got prints of Adam Gibbs and Ben Horn and Matt Payne behind me. I've got a William Neal print that I've yet to put up, even though I've had it for several years, and others. And like part of it to me is like, if I know that they made the print themselves, it has a little bit extra meaning and value to me as well. Like, hey, that's somebody I really respect and admire that physically produced this. So no offense to Matt, he didn't produce his.
Awesome. So before we dive into some of the technicals or some of the discussion around, should I print at home, should I outsource, or, some of those technical details, do you think printing or knowing you might print a photo changes your approach in the field for how you capture something or anything like that? Does that knowledge that you'd like to print your top photos factor into how you're capturing a photo in the field or approaching a scene, even if it's not a technical consideration? Does printing affect that for you?
I can't really say it does. I'm photographing something because it's caught my eye. It's sparked curiosity. It's intrigued me, whatever cliched phrase you want to use, as to why I decided to set up the camera and take the shot. So I can't say I've ever set up for a composition and then thought, this isn't going to work in print. And honestly, like, at least for my style of work, most of it works perfectly fine in print anyways. I could see somebody that tends to shoot or process their images in a much darker, moodier vibe, or does a lot more high contrast work where, some images may not work as well with print. 'Cause the downside to prints, obviously, is you've got less dynamic range than what screens are capable of. But I can't think of any time ever being in the field, framing up a shot or in the act of firing the shutter, that I thought to myself, ooh, I need to do this a little bit differently because of the print. Now, with film, that was probably, definitely a consideration, because obviously with film, like, you're not going to see it without the print. So
you were always going to print.
Right. So you had the dynamic range of the print, but also, watching Ben Horn's videos as an example, he talks about the different films and the way they handle either high contrast scenes or the color tones or what have you, which is going to directly correlate to a print version as well in terms of the final representation. So, I don't really know. Like I said, unless you're a photographer that tends to work like really, really dark, where shadow detail might be an issue, and you realize you need to maybe account for that in some way, exposure bracketing, or where you normally, I don't know. It's just, to me, the scene is the scene, and you want to photograph it or you don't. And I'm not going to not photograph something for the sake of maybe it's not going to work on print.
Yep. I feel similar. I don't think I've ever consciously made a decision in the field to, print, not print. I do think some of my images come out better candidates for printing once I get them home, but it's much more of a review. To your point, shadows, darks, high contrast. Okay, maybe, from that standpoint. But as far as out in the field, I don't so much think it influences what I'm doing compositionally or even technically much. Maybe you mentioned exposure bracket. I could see maybe if you were a dark and moody shooter and you knew you were going to print, you might take that safety shot in case you did decide to print and wanted a little more detail to bring out. So, but I'm probably not actually doing that. But I could see a case for that. Yeah, and I think a lot of the dark and moody photographers also, I don't feel like I've seen as much emphasis from them on selling prints. So again, like that type of photography, and I'm thinking of like a Ryan Dyer specifically is the one that comes to mind. Like that is really well suited to a luminescent viewing experience, aka viewing it on a monitor, as opposed to a reflective experience, aka a print, where you're solely relying on the amount of light bouncing off the print. So, I could see maybe that particular style also dictating whether you're interested in prints or pursue printing or anything too. Yeah, makes sense. So we sort of talked about the value printing and why we think it's important. So now you're sitting at home and you're like, I want to print something. And this topic, it's going to be so spider webby. Just bear with us as we go through it, because some of this, I think there's overlap. But I think the first question is printing at home versus outsourcing, just sort of at a high level. And then underneath that, we're going to get into probably some technicals that sort of apply to both, whether you're doing it at home. But I mean, I know how you print your images, but what do you think for someone starting out? Should they outsource it to somewhere? Should they go ahead and get a printer? And feel free to dive into how big of a, you mentioned a 3 foot by 4 foot printer,
Right.
which might be behind you there in your
No,
scene,
not quite. I didn't go that absurd.
But what do you think on that? If you're looking to get started printing, which path should you be looking at, or considerations on that?
So, I mean, to me, like most likely everybody starts out with a third-party lab. Like the very first prints I ever had made were through Walgreens. I mean, this was early days before I was pursuing it, quote unquote, seriously or anything like that. And honestly, some of those prints came out pretty acceptable. So, it's not that you can't go a cheaper route and get a decent print. So, I mean, I started off using third-party labs. And, when I first launched my first website, it was through SmugMug, which links up with different third-party print labs. I had selected Bay Photo for mine.
Are we going to go there?
we might go there.
We've already got Peak Design mad at us.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I think we touched more nerves on that Peak Design tripod conversation. I've had more comments about that. Although Michelle, the workshop attendee that had it, she emailed me the other day about something. Okay. And she said she got a really good laugh out of it. So the person that matters most, the person, our paying client, was not offended. So that's good to know. Anyway, now I lost my train of thought. But
sorry. Outsourced print labs. You start with the Walgreens of the world, move into the professional labs. We mentioned Bay Photo, and then our evolution in printing.
Yeah. So the tricky thing you get into is quality versus cost, and knowing where you're going to get a quality result versus maybe spending more than what you want and getting a much better result and going with a Walgreens or, the thing that ultimately moved me away from third-party printing was, for me, I was using it primarily to sell prints through my website, and they were just drop shipped directly to the buyer, and I never got to see them. So there was always that nagging, I don't really know the quality of what I'm sending out. And some of them I would get, if it was an image I was interested in for myself, I would get a print, and for the most part, they would look pretty good. I've got an issue with Bay Photo over calendars more so than their individual prints. And I know plenty of people that are happy with Bay, but you look at Bay, for instance, and I'm not intending to pick on them, but they're the ones I have experience with. They are a mass production print lab. They are doing it for probably thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of customers, as opposed to who I use today, which is New Mexico Fine Art. It's a small print lab. I assume they still do pretty good business, but they're not trying to be a Bay Photo mass production printer, which means you're going to get a little bit more attention to detail. You're going to have better attention to quality assurance. If they notice a problem with your file, they're likely to reach out to you and say, hey, did you mean to do this? Or, hey, we think you accidentally did this, or you screwed it up, and let's get that corrected before we actually run it. So it's more of a boutique third party versus the mass production third party. That would be a Bay Lab or somebody equivalent to Bay Photo. So I think everybody will start out most likely through a third party. If you just send them a file and don't let them make any adjustments or corrections to it, or you don't make any proofing adjustments for the sake of the fact, again, that it's a reflective print, not a luminescent monitor, then it's possible you're going to get it back and be disappointed because it's too dark or the colors are off or what have you. And most labs will give you the profile you need to install so that you can do your print proofing with the profile for the paper and the printer they're using. I would say that's probably something to look for in a print lab, is do they offer that? But on the flip side, like NMFA, they don't offer that, but they recommend that you set your monitor to a certain temperature and luminosity and do it that way. So, there's various approaches, but I would say at the very least, you want a lab that's either going to provide the ICC profile that you can install to get an idea of what it's going to look like and maybe some adjustments you want to make to it before you send off the file to them. or you want a lab like NMFA where you at least can work with them in understanding how they're viewing it and what their recommendations are, even if they don't offer the actual ICC profile.
Yep.
So on top of that, talking about the economics of third-party printing from a Walgreens to a mass production lab like Bay to NMFA, who's a little bit more boutique, but, well, a lot more boutique than Bay, but honestly, they're still very reasonably priced. Third-party is always going to be cheaper than printing your own. Especially like if you're not, unless you just want to do it for the love of printing, or you want to print a ton of your work, or you're already selling a lot of work and you're relying upon a third party, the economy of scale that a third party has over the time and effort and material cost and everything that you will have doing it yourself, there's a vast chasm between those two pieces. I mean, just up front, I paid $2,500 for the Canon Pro 2100 behind me, not accounting for the full ink replacement I've done since I bought it and everything. That's a hell of a lot of prints that I would be sending off to NMFA or anybody else just to recoup the cost of that printer. I did it though because I truly felt like I wasn't getting the full creative realization of my vision, of my art, by relying on somebody to finish what I look at is really the most crucial step. Processing is crucial. Composition is crucial. Your field craft is crucial. But if I'm going to sit here and say the print is the truest representation of my art, my vision, well, then why would I hand that off to a third party and say, hey, have at it?
Right.
So there's that factor too.
And
third party's always going to be cheaper.
Right. Definitely from an economy standpoint. But I think you're dancing right on one facet of it. Printing is like a whole different world. Like you can be a great photographer at the capture, you can be a great post processor, and then you get into that printing at home aspect. That's a whole other realm of knowledge about things. Some of it which overlaps with I think the outsourcing it as well, because there's certain things like you mentioned. The first print I did, I think it was, I won't mention the vendor because it wasn't their fault,
right?
But it was more than a Walgreens, but not into like a boutique NMFA or something like that. And it was too dark, and it's just that's when you get the whole realization. We've talked about the reflected light versus the luminance backlit image. That's I feel like everyone that prints, that's their intro to the printing.
Right.
Oh yeah, the monitor makes things brighter,
right.
and the paper doesn't. But but to your point, if you want that level of craftsmanship, and I think you can sort of work through that with an outsourced lab if you find one you trust and they are more of a boutique. But the real-time feedback you were able to get and still get through printing, you can probably get to where you want to be within by now, probably a test print or two. But even when you were learning, probably a series of test prints that you were able to solve in a couple days, real-time at home, versus someone like me that might have to, I'm going to send that out in about a week. I'll get a copy, realize, oops, I should probably tweak this a little bit. And, so my process to figure it out is weeks long versus the real-time feedback.
Yeah, about the most streamlined you can get it with a third-party lab is either you send off multiple files at the same time and get multiple prints back and say, okay, well, this one, I bumped the exposure this amount, the shadows this amount. The contrast, I didn't bump on this one, but I did on that. And you can compare maybe 3 or 4 prints side by side and see which one worked the best and then go with that as your final for a client or for yourself. Or you could create a collage in one file and maybe you do a larger, like a 16 by 20, but you've just got 4 different variations printed on that one 16 by 20 sheet. So you can do that and streamline the process. Obviously, you're going to get into more cost that way. But yeah, it's what spurred me, besides wanting to do the printing myself for my own artistic reasons, and from the moment of pressing the shutter to the moment of the print coming off the printer, having that 100% control and input, whatever, on the creative process. What spurred me as well is I was selling prints through my initial website through Bay. And like you said, it's not a fault of Bay, but I ordered some of my prints for, I can't remember if it was for the house or I had a coffee shop presentation feature, whatever, at one point. So I had some prints come out. And I got the prints, and it was just like this. Part of it was the paper type. I was like, for some of them, I was using a more metallic paper. And I remember one image in particular from the fog, one of my more popular images from Oklahoma, black and white, very, almost looks like a charcoal drawing just with the heavy fog and conditions it was. And I had printed it on more of a metallic paper, and I got that print. I was like, oh my God, if somebody had bought this, like, this is not how I want my work or myself to be represented. It was, the metallic finish just didn't match with that photo. And it was too dark, to your point. And then I had a couple other images that were just way too dark. And that's no fault of the print lab. That was 100% my fault. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what they were producing. I could have had test prints sent to me or whatever, but I wasn't. And it was at that point that I was like, I really probably should take more control of this. But yeah, I do have a beef with Bay. It's not over necessarily their prints. I had a bad experience with them trying to produce a calendar, and really bad quality assurance, which is the problem you're going to run into with these mass production labs. The revision I got, like, I had a special slip in there saying it was quality checked, and like everything I had raised as an issue was even worse. And it was like, okay. So that was my issue with Bay. If you're wanting just a regular print, they're probably fine.
Yep. I mean, I had an outsourced story because you mentioned if you drop ship from your outsourced vendor to your client, you don't really know what they got. And they might have done great 95% of the time, but that 5% time, you won't really know. And if the customer doesn't speak up, if it's just sort of a slightly off thing as opposed to outright wrong, they might just, I'm not impressed. If you saw it, you'd be like, yeah, I never would have sent that out. I had a canvas I sold, decent sized, person was budget constrained, so I used a vendor that came recommended, but was a lower cost vendor. I had it shipped to me because it was going to be a local delivery, and I tend to have it come to me. It was not even my image, and we're not even talking like I opened it up, and it was like it wasn't even like a similar, a different landscape photographer's image. It was a portrait, a big, huge black and white portrait that I'm like, this is not the waterfall I sold. So, luckily, it's and to your point, and I think where this comes down to is if you're trying to choose an outsourced vendors, think from the quality control aspect, and those large mass print labs. There's many of them. Bay Photo happens to be one. There's others out there. The quality control is going to be quick and not quite what you'd get from more of a boat.
It's probably going to be more hit or miss.
Place. So,
like
exactly.
Maybe so just 90% of what they put out is fine, but there's that 10% variance. Whereas a place like an MFA or there's plenty of other boutique labs, although we've also seen a lot of them close over the last few years. But NMFA, New Mexico Fine Art, they're the ones I've got the most experience with. Like, they're going to be taking the time to review the outcome, and they just stopped Canvas, and one of the reasons was the quality assurance just wasn't consistent enough. Not anything they were doing, but just the nature of Canvas and the variabilities there. They just felt it wasn't up to their standards, so they decided to discontinue their Canvas offering. So it's not to totally disregard somebody like a Bay or another mass production house, but you just kind of have to know what you're getting into and know that you may not have as consistent a result from print to print.
So we talked, printing doesn't really affect how you're shooting in the field per se, but there's certain choices around paper types, beyond paper types, medium in general, right? You and I see these discussions all the time. Should I print acrylic, metal, we've talked canvas, and even paper itself. You have a lot of experience with different papers and different mediums. So if someone's looking to print, what should someone be looking for? And are there some high-level things to keep in mind when you choose a paper or choose a medium, how they might react or something like that? Or even if you want to go as far to like a recommendation of something, just because I told you earlier before, I get overwhelmed with the paper types and what to choose and what they do and everything like that. Right. So is there any advice you would have on that in that side of the world for mediums and choosing what to print on?
Yeah, and I'd say one of the things you have to consider is who are you printing for primarily? Are you printing for yourself and you're going to plant that flag in the ground and saying, this is how I want my work presented and this is the way I'm going to do it, and I don't give a damn what the buyer might want per se, or a lot of buyers, they really like the metal prints and acrylic prints. They can be displayed frame or not. I sell them. I no pun intended, I frame it as ready to hang. They come to the buyer. They're immediately, they've got the bracketing or whatever, the hardware, and they take them out of the box and they can hang them up. Whereas if they buy one of my artist series prints that I print myself, I don't sell those framed. I don't sell them mounted, especially once you get into larger sizes from a shipping standpoint. It's just a nightmare and a costly endeavor as well. So those are ready to frame is how again, I keep using the word frame. Ready to frame is how I frame it.
Right.
You're going to get the print, but then you're going to have to find a reputable place to take it and get it framed properly and everything. So I prefer framed work. I prefer work on paper. I really I've got a couple of my prints, for those in the video in the back corner here, a couple of my own prints that I've got displayed without glass in front of them, because then I don't have reflections and I can truly enjoy the texture of the paper I'm using. But for a while, I stood firm on not offering ready-to-hang options like the acrylic or canvas or metal prints, because I personally don't like those as much. It's not to say they can't look stunning or that they don't look stunning. It's just my personal taste is more of that traditional fine art paper. But from a commercial and marketing and business standpoint, I ultimately came around to I probably need to offer these other options that are popular in the market. So I do offer acrylic, I do offer metal. So you've got to kind of make that decision there of, are you going to be firm on what you personally are most in love with, so to speak, or are you going to open it up a little bit to appeal more to that buyer that may be interested in something other than your personal taste as well? So there's that factor. From a paper standpoint, I use Red River Palo Duro Etching 315. I think I mentioned it in one of the prior episodes talking about my box set. It's a very heavyweight, almost like a watercolor paper in some ways. It's textured, but it's a subtle texture. So it's there, you can notice it, but it's not like a canvas type of texture where it's very, very prominent. The thing I love about it, I've got my final proofing prints from my box set, but it's completely matte. It's not a luster or anything like that, which is the way I prefer, especially when things are going to get framed, because now you've got a glossy print behind glossy glass or acrylic. And even if you go with museum glass, it's quote unquote no glare. There's still reflections. There's still glare. So, for, again, anybody on video, like I'm holding this up right under my studio lighting and there's obviously no reflections whatsoever. I don't know that I can get it to a point where you might be able to see the texture, and it probably not going to work so well. But anyways, again, for those on video, you can get a sense of how thick it is. Like I'm holding it on the edge, and it's not just
for those not on video. Michael's waving these prints around and like holding things up to the camera. So just imagine Michael.
I'm doing an interpretive dance with print.
Yes.
So that's what I like, and honestly, I think I haven't come across an image of mine yet that doesn't work well with that paper. I know some people will print different types of images in different paper. They may use a different paper for black and white versus color, or more of a smoother type paper, or even a luster with a little bit of sheen to it versus a matte paper, depending on the scene. My style of photography, I don't really think that type of variability in the paper really makes a difference. The thing I love about the Palo Duro Etching 315 from Red River is it handles colors phenomenally well, especially for a fine art matte paper, which often don't handle colors and blacks as well. It handles blacks extremely well. So I feel like I still get a very high dynamic range and vibrant print out of it, whereas a lot of papers that are maybe similar may not have quite that range. I tried some others on recommendations when I first started out, and I was really disappointed with them, and I can't remember how I got clued into Red River, probably social media ad or something. The other nice thing with Red River is you can get sample packs. So I bought a sample pack. I think it came with 2 sheets of each of their fine art papers, and I just printed for each. I proofed for each and printed, and the Etching 315 is what I fell in love with. I also really like their soft gloss. I think it's soft gloss rag, but ultimately, that's not my favorite. It's great. It's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. But for me, I preferred the texture of the etching. So it's going to take some trial and error starting out. If you are going to go down that path of doing your own printing and making the upfront investment of buying the printer, you're going to spend a fair bit on getting paper. Some, like Red River, offer sample packs. Others, unfortunately, don't. So some of that can actually add up pretty quickly in terms of the cost.
Right.
If you want to try various manufacturers and paper types. But it's just going to take trial and error. And also, it takes trial and error to... Even if you're, the tricky part is the startup for printing yourself is by far the trickiest, because you're trying to find the paper you like, but you're also trying to find your way in terms of proofing, aka editing, specifically for print. And each paper, you might have to approach it a little bit differently from that proofing standpoint. Yep. So just because you get a result you don't like doesn't mean it's the paper's fault. It could very well be that you didn't proof it properly. So there's just a lot of trial and error in getting started. Fortunately, again, going on a tangent, but like starting out, at least with the Canon printers, I'm sure Epson's the same. Those are the two primary printer brands you're going to go with for printing yourself. They come with starter ink. I was very happy to discover that the starter ink carts for the Pro 2100 lasted way, way, way longer than I expected them to. Because when I came time to buy a full replacement set, it was, I think, $1,800. So not that far off from the cost of the printer when I bought it. So just, you got to factor that in too. Is like, do you really want to print? Because if you are doing a lot of printing, that ink gets expensive.
Right.
The one advantage is the bigger you go, the cheaper per milliliter the ink is. So there's a little bit of an offset in terms of the cost there too that aren't obvious, because you're not just looking at the sticker price of the printer itself. But it's just... There's going to be trial and error, especially if you've never printed yourself before. Even if you've got some experience printing through third-party labs and using ICC profiles that they've provided. Again, if you're trying to find the paper that you like and that you want to use, you don't know what you don't know. So you're just going to have to play around with it.
Yeah. So let's take that the trial and error bit, because assuming someone's new to printing, and you and I, we both hit the big one that if you haven't printed before, catches you by surprise, that things are underexposed. Just in general, even your highlights are like, that's not as bright as it was on my screen. And we know this is a huge topic if we dive fully into sharpening and all of that. But from your experience, maybe what are to try to move someone to the thing. Obviously, my first tip I give anyone printing, bump your exposure up a little bit. Almost a global bump up will help you get closer to where you want to be on that first print, which is still probably going to have some things. But I guess what are maybe your top 2 or 3 tips, areas you should consider, or maybe we've just sort of glossed over to take that trial and error to, well, what do you mean by trial and error? What am I doing? I think exposure is the obvious one we both hit, but what are some tips you might have for someone trying to print for the first time to, I don't know, not be utterly disappointed in their first print because they didn't factor in a couple little, and give them that little bit of head start.
Right. So if you want to go totally basic, like I do all of my printing from within Lightroom Classic. You can print from Photoshop and basically have the same set of options and everything. You can use the printer manufacturer software, but I do it all from within Lightroom. If you want to keep it super, super basic, as part of the printing module in Lightroom Classic, down at the bottom, I can't remember, I think it's the second, it might be the very bottom panel on the right, you can actually do it's just a point adjustment for exposure and for contrast. So if you want to keep it simple and not even go into a proof copy of the image, you can just go and change those sliders. And typically I would bump them up, and that'll at least bump up the exposure. The tricky part, and I don't know why they did it, it's not an exposure slider. It's not a contrast slider. It's like a scale of, I don't even know what the scale is, 1 to 10, 1
I'm
to 20.
not even sure if I know where you're talking about in Lightroom.
Yeah, this is the downside of
is it in the print tab? Is it
in
the print?
Yeah, so when you go into the print module itself, it's in the lower
So once
right.
you're in the print module, there's a magic...
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The downside to doing a podcast.
This is why I'm interviewing Michael on this one. Yeah, this is why I'm talking to Michael on this and pulling it out of him, because he has the more contribution from a technical. Because I'm here learning this little thing too.
So that is the most basic way to at least get a bump in brightness and a bump in contrast if you feel like you need it. Typically what I do though is I just start off and I print the photo as it is. I don't make any adjustments. I obviously I have the ICC profile and the printer profile and loaded in Lightroom and everything, so it's going to print correctly in terms of that. But I'm taking the edit that I made just from a digital, viewed on monitor standpoint. I'm printing that out. That way I can see, how does it look in print? What do I need to start working towards? Because some images, like I'll use, again, I know for those listening, I'm breaking the
He's
the
waving
experience
paper
here,
around,
but
folks.
this photo from my box set, A Morning of Celebration, this is exactly how it printed without making any edits to it. And I'm really happy. I think I did end up bumping it up like a 1/10 of a stop on exposure. That's pretty rare. Like usually I can't just print it as is and it comes out good. For whatever reason, in this particular collection, I had a couple like that. But anyways, start off, just print it as you've edited it and see what it looks like. And right away, you're going to know, well, this is looking a little dark overall, or, oh, those shadows in the lower left corner are, I've lost detail there because the printer just can't replicate the dynamic range that the screen can represent. So right off the bat, you're just going to start to get an idea of what you need to then go in and make adjustments with your proofing copy. And again, in Lightroom Classic, when you enable the proofing mode, as soon as you touch any sliders, it's going to ask you if you want to make a proofing copy. And if you say yes, it'll just create a virtual copy so that you're not changing the edit of your image as you want it for digital display. You're not losing that. And then you can go in and start making your adjustments. Typically, previously, I wasn't necessarily printing them just as is. I would go in and I'd start off every print. I would bump the exposure by 0.3 of a stop. So 0.3 on the exposure slider. At least there I was getting some adjustment from an exposure standpoint to, again, account for the light reflective nature of a print versus the light emitting nature of a monitor. So I'd bump it 0.3. Usually, even whether I'm doing it right off the bat or if I've done the quote unquote raw print of my digital edit, I usually find I want to bump the contrast a bit. Sometimes I do it with the tone curve. Sometimes I do it with the global contrast slider. Sometimes I'm going into masking and making some adjustments. Typically, it's exposure and contrast. And then the third would be shadows. If I am working with an image that's got some deeper shadows, I may have to bump shadows 10, 15, 20 points. Again, maybe that's globally. Oftentimes, that type of adjustment I'm going to do more in masking because I don't want to bump the shadows necessarily everywhere, just in the darkest areas. I'm at a point now, though, where I've actually got a gradient that I created in Canva from pure black to pure white, and I think it's like 10% shifts in brightness on that document I created. And I just printed it out raw, and then I could see from one bar to the next, can I tell the difference? And with the paper I use, the printer I use, and the pigment inks that the printer uses, I've got discernible contrast in every one of those bars until I get to the very two darkest bars, pure black and the next one up. You can't tell the difference between those two. So I'm going to go into the weeds for a moment. For those of you that understand this, great. If not, I can help you if you want, or there's plenty of resources out there that can kind of guide you. But in Lightroom, there's a way you can look at lab values on the histogram instead of your color, your RGB percentages. Don't ask me what lab stands for, because right now I can't recall. One's for two colors, one's for other colors, but the L is the one you want to worry about. And in this particular case, that's your luminance value. So I know on my Palo Duro etching 315 with my Canon Pro 2100 and the pigment inks that it uses, I can print down to about a luminance value of 11, and I'll still have detail in the shadows. Anything darker than 11 on that lab luminance value, I'm probably not going to have the detail there. So before even printing, I can just take my mouse in the develop module and just hover it over my darkest parts of the image. And, oh, okay, well, I already know now this black value is 8 and the surrounding area is in that range. So if I don't brighten it for the print, it's going to come out just a solid solid block of black. Again, that's going down in the weeds. And that's where, printing, I do feel like a lot of tutorials, especially, and a lot of photographers want to make printing out as like this super complex, like, oh, you're going to have to do 10, 20 proofing prints and everything. Like, once you get it down, it's really not that hard. Like once you understand the technical aspects of it, but there are some rabbit holes you can certainly go down.
Yeah, I think like you said, there's those core couple things to look at: exposure, contrast, shadows. And then there is no set rule, so it's not like you can come here and say always do these three things, because it does vary on your printing surface, whether it's metal, acrylic, or paper type. But like to your point, it's not that complicated. To do. Just go into it knowing the first print may not be perfect, but don't panic that, oh, you're not ever going to understand it. It's really a few levers to look at and play with. And if you settle in on a paper or a paper type or two or a certain medium to print on, you'll figure it out and be semi-consistent from there. So yeah, I agree. Don't let people don't let people scare you away from printing. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Don't get scared by my rabbit value. Rabbit hole there.
Yes.
Like that's just
I'm over here shaking. Yeah.
It's just an example of things you learn over time. But yeah, I mean,
it's like anything, right? Even our photography today, you and I could easily dive into a conversation that makes photography sound really hard. No, it's just as you get into these rabbit holes, there's more and more nuances. But at its top level, to get a successful print that you'll be happy with, even in a client will be happy with, it doesn't take a whole lot. Just be aware of a couple of these things so you don't give up the first print you see that it's.
And at the end of the day, editing for a print is no different than editing for a screen. You just have different parameters. You could argue that it's editing for a poor quality screen because you're not going to have the dynamic range, and so you're having to account for that. The other thing you got to account for is, when you're looking for papers and you're trying your different papers out, how white is the paper? Is it a natural white, or do they have artificial whiteners in it? That impacts the whiteness of the paper, but also impacts the longevity of the print. If it's got artificial whiteners and OBAs, optical brighteners, those tend to degrade over time, and that's where you start seeing the paper yellow over time, especially if it's exposed to any UV light from sun or indirect sun or what have you. All the paper I use, the Palo Duro, it's OBA free. It's a natural white, so it is a little bit warmer. So that's where sometimes I do have to go in and make color adjustments as well. I might need to make some hue adjustments to account. I might need to cool the print down a little bit versus how it's displayed on screen, because I'm editing for a D65 on my monitor setting, but the paper is not that same temperature at the end of the day. But if you're using the proofing mode in Lightroom or Photoshop, it's also accounting for that whiteness difference as well. So that's really the only other adjustment. You say, okay, well, exposure, contrast, shadows, and colors. Like, well, that's all I do. Well, that could be the entire image, but I don't have to adjust colors on every single one. Some, like the Celebration of Life one I was holding up, that's a very warm image. It looked great right off the bat without any color adjustments on the warmer paper. Typically where I see it is on images with a lot of cooler tones, that suddenly it becomes warmer on the print because of the paper I'm using. So I might have to drop the overall temperature of the image down. Or again, I might have to go in, especially with some of the greens and things that are still on the cooler end, but there is that more recognizable color to them. Maybe I've got to make some hue adjustments there. But again, it's just going to vary from image to image. And that's something that really, until I print it, I don't, there's no baseline color edit I do just right off the bat that I know I'm going to have to do this. Because again, it's just going to vary from photo to photo.
Changes.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So that's a lot of things, and we're coming up, getting close to an hour. Let's see. Unless there's something big, you feel like we're sort of skipping over the business side of it, I think, maybe.
And that can certainly be a different conversation as well.
I feel like that's a different conversation. I think we ended up leaning more towards your first print for yourself. We only danced around a little bit of the customer aspect as to what to choose. I feel like that could be another episode itself. So unless you have something else, I feel like what's one lesson you've learned through printing that changed how you approach photography overall?
what's the one like lesson learned or?
Yeah. So like, you and I both print images. Is there some lesson that printing brought to the table that in our approach to photography that we might not otherwise? And that could be any number of things, right? Like that the final product is a print, or any number of things.
So
has printing changed how you approach photography?
I would say more than anything, it's changed how I approach my processing. And I think that's why some of the images I printed for the most recent box set, like I didn't feel like I needed to do that much for them. I tended to process my images a little warmer than I do these days. And part of that is just I feel I can get some better color separation. Actually, that was some input Alex Noriega kindly gave me on one of my ebooks I had shared with him before release in terms of getting some better color separation and calming things down a little bit. So I think with that adjustment in my processing approach, it wasn't because of printing, but it's made my printing a little simpler. Again, I'm not having to do as much tweaking, at least in colors, that I maybe had to do in the past. But to me, the biggest lesson, and the unfortunate thing of it is, like, there's no way you can teach this lesson without just somebody experiencing themselves. But there is nothing, whether I'm printing the image for the first time or the 10th time, there's nothing like watching the print come off my printer, little row by row. I'm peeking through the glass on the top, and it's still like, it just gives me goosebumps seeing it come off. And certainly, if it's an image I'm really, really excited about, it's like, what is it going to look like? It's fun. It's cool. It feels more real. It's certainly more tangible than just viewing it on the screen. So whether you use a third-party lab or you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, you just decide to go out and buy a printer and dive full bore into it. Like I said, whether it's because you just love the idea of printing your own work and you don't have a business or a financial aspect of it, or you do want to sell prints or you're already selling prints, print your work. Again, whether it's a third party, whether it's getting your own, if you have a friend that's got a printer, ask him to print one of your prints off and hand it off or send it to you. There's just nothing like seeing it. And one thing I would touch on too is one of the questions that we had on our prep sheet that we didn't really get to, and I'll just touch on briefly, is it has changed how I see some images of mine. Like, I've had some images where I've been like, I kind of like it. And then I print it, and I'm thinking of one in particular, Summer Reverie. I first printed it for Tristan Todd as part of our Secret Santa exchange a couple of years ago. When I first printed it, it was super, super warm. It wasn't very like light and airy, which is kind of how I remember the scene. And I did a massive change to the proofing edit to get the print looking how I wanted. And then that spurred me to go back and change the edit for the quote unquote digital version. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes that printing can really help your overall processing as well, or just make you realize that, oh, you know what, maybe I went the wrong direction on my processing on this one. And through that act of printing, and again, there's just something different about having the print in your hand versus staring at a screen. You see it a little bit differently. You notice things differently. I catch things all the time that I missed on the digital processing of it, whether it be a spot removal that I should have addressed, or a color tone slightly off, or what have you. It really just gives you a totally different viewpoint on your work. So yeah, I
think that's for me, the printing and the lesson I learned. You really hit it with that spot healing thing. It makes me more diligent about looking at my images, even if they're not going to see print.
Right.
Because I've had so many prints where, how many times have you printed something and you noticed, how was that in there? And it's like you edited the whole thing and got okay, this is good. You send it off, you get it back, and like the first thing your eye goes to is, how did I not see that on the screen? So I know for me, that's one beyond just the fact that I do think having a print in your hand is super rewarding and well worth doing, but it's made me more diligent, even on images that don't go to print to look for, do that edge patrol,
That's
that.
what I just had in my mind.
Light?
Yeah.
Yeah, like things. I've got an image. You can't see it in a frame over here. That there's a piece of sky coming through. That in the digital, really didn't notice it a whole lot. It didn't leap out at me, so it's seen many times. And now it hangs as a 16 by 24 on above my desk. And every time I look up, I'm like, why did I let that sky gap stay in there in that comp? So those are things that even though I don't print, I think that's sort of one of the lessons printing has brought to me is that slightly higher attention to detail, because for some reason, until you've put it on paper, you miss things.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, the sky gaps is a great one. There's stuff all the time like tree canopies where the gap looks perfectly fine on the screen, but if I print it, it's just like it's like a
boom, like
strobe
look
light.
Look at me. Yep,
and then
for sure.
To your point, the edge patrol too. Like if you're not sure about your edges, and we talked about it with Matt in the last episode. The border patrol, edge patrol, whatever you want to call it, of looking for those distractions kind of poking in from the edges. Man, print it, and you will see those distractions real quick. Whether it's because 100%. It comes out with a slight border or what, it's just, again, there's just something about seeing it in print that you notice things that you could stare at the digital version of it, and often you do stare at the digital version of it for half an hour, 45 minutes. Some people spend hours on their processing. And you never see it, but as soon as the print comes off, you're like, how did I miss that?
Yep.
That is so obvious.
100%.
So 100%. There's other benefits to the printing beyond just the viewing experience for sure.
Awesome.
So I guess
I think that went well. Good topic.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't meander on too many side paths.
No, you're good. You have a lot of expertise to
share.
There
were a couple of those answers.
It's hard to pull it out.
Yeah, there's a couple of those answers like, I've been talking for like a minute and I have no idea what the question was, but hopefully I answered it. But again, we'll throw it out to the audience. Like if you've got questions about this, if I totally confused you with my lab discussion, by all means, head over to our Patreon. Again, we'll keep pointing out that's where our community is. You don't have to be a paid member to be part of the community. You can follow for free and leave comments, feedback, questions, all that stuff on the episodes.
No podcast timeline is weird, but I believe we're releasing early episodes on Patreon paid subscribers at this point too, right?
Yes, this should be our fourth episode where we've done early release.
So, sorry for one day we'll get the timeline right, but...
Maybe. We'll see. But maybe. Definitely, I know this is a topic where people have a lot of interest and a lot of questions, so jump into the community and ask away. There was something else I was going to throw out there too around the questions. Oh, and then also, I guess if you do want a follow up discussion on this, getting more into like the pricing of prints and limited versus open editions and things like that, certainly let us know as well. Because I think we could definitely have a complete separate episode just more on the business side of the print things. I do think there's a lot of things, and I see a lot of photographers that price their stuff. And there's no way they are accounting for everything that goes into the process. They're totally underselling themselves. And that alone, I could probably go on for like 20 minutes about. So.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a full episode in there between, we touched on, what medium to print on. I think we touched on that a little bit, but I think there's more there. Pricing, delivery, if there's interest in hearing more about the business of printing and that, let us know, because we'd be happy to dive into that topic as well.
Well, like we said, there's a lot of complexity to the subject. The actual act of making a print is not necessarily the most complex. It's everything that kind of leads up to it. And then if you are trying to sell, it's the stuff that comes along that you've got to factor in terms of profit and shipping and all that jazz. So we can certainly do a follow-up episode on there. So, I think that pretty well settles it. Any last questions for me, Jeffrey? Or
no, I think that's it. I think we covered a lot of good things there, and we'll see what folks want to hear more about, and we'll dive into some of those in a future episode.
All right. Well, sounds good. And everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And as always, until next time, take care.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.